All right, well, here we are again with Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. And I'm going to be reviewing pages 169 to 213 with you today. So here we are, we start on Valentine's Day. And of course, Arnold gives Penelope a Valentine. However, she pretends like she's forgotten that it's Valentine's Day. So he gets kind of nothing in return. Super sad day though. Eugene gets shot in the face and dies. So this is the dad's best friend. This is the person who's been picking Arnold up from school sometimes on the back of the motorcycle. This is the person that he is really, really close to. And why did he get shot in the face? Well, he got shot in the face by one of his good friends, Bobby, simply because they were fighting over who got the last sip in this bottle of wine. So there's a whole little cartoon about it, and it goes over different ways people interact with one another. And we just have these horrible, horrible effects of alcoholism that keep popping up over and over here. Um, you know, so this happened because they were drunk. And so what do people do in response? Well, in response, they drink more. So the father goes on this big drinking binge, mom goes on a church binge, so it's between God and booze and God and booze. We've got Arnold, who's just confused. He's angry. He doesn't know who to blame. He's kind of trying to blame God. He just doesn't know. So he's doing more drawing than he's ever done before. He's looking up the definition of grief. He's looking up, trying to read. He's trying to find a way to make sense of his world. And this is just really, really hard for him. It seems like alcoholism is definitely a plague of a reservation. It's just something that seems to infect all of the families. And he really puts a big emphasis on that in this entire section that we're reading now. So he even goes so far as to try to blame himself for all of the deaths. He says he cursed his family because I left the tribe. I had broken something inside all of us, and now I was being punished for that. My family was being punished for that. Meaning he's thinking that the fact that he left the reservation to go to Reardon, somehow all of this plays into it, and he's the reason that things are happening. So he's really taking a lot of this blame on himself, even though it's definitely not his fault at all. He's been missing a lot of school. And why did he miss school? Well, he drew a whole cartoon about that for us right here. Why did I actually miss a lot of school, right? So he misses school for wakes and funerals. He couldn't find a ride. He had no money in the house. His mom wants him to stay home because she's afraid with all this death going on. Dad has been on this drinking binge, so they've had to go out and search for the father, right? So there's lots of reasons why he hasn't been to school, and there's reasons that he's just not going to share with all those people at Reardon. But Gordy, super nice kid still, right? Remember Gordy, the little awkward guy? So he stands up for Arnold. So Arnold has this teacher who's just clearly not normal. She says, "Oh, class, we have a special guest today. It's Arnold Spirit. I didn't realize you still went to this school, Mr. Spirit." Well, the whole class gets quiet because they all know that he's been dealing with all this death. And so Gordy gets up and like drops a book, and then everybody else gets up and drops their books, and they're kind of showing their support for him. And this is something that makes him feel good, right? So he's finally got people standing up for him. So what he starts to do is try to find all the little pieces of joy in his life. And if you look on page 176 through 178, he makes a list of people that bring him joy. He makes a list of music that brings him joy, foods that bring him joy, books, and basketball players. And he keeps making these lists of all these things that bring him joy to try to bring himself out of his depression, out of his misery. So that's a really good thing. The next chapter is all about basketball. So remember that first game that he played when he had to go against the reservation team and they demolished him before he even got to play? Well, now he's got this new revived drive in him and he wants to win this time. And he doesn't just want to win just because he wants to kind of get back at Rowdy for beating him the first time, but it's because they have expectations at Reardon. And what he's learned by being at Reardon is that he can live up to the expectations that are set for him. There's power in these expectations. And he says, as they expected more of me, I expected more of myself, and it just grew until I was scoring 12 points a game. So suddenly He's good. He's good because people expected him to be good. When he lived on the reservation, no one expected anything of him. Remember, they bullied him, they made fun of him. He had some disability. Well, he still has the disabilities, but people are overlooking those disabilities at Reardon where they weren't on the reservation. And now that he feels people have higher expectations for him, he's rising to those expectations. Even though he has still a few problems, he calls himself a yucker, right? Because he's nervous before a game, so he throws up before a game. That's what's going on there. On page 182, we have this little cartoon that he drew of himself when he's in the Wellpit gym the first time, where they're teasing him. They're calling him a white lover because he went to this other school. He doesn't know who he is. He feels like this devil. Now we have him in the second picture in the Reardon gym where he's like this angel. He's on cloud nine. He's doing everything. He still doesn't quite know who he is, but he wants he wants to win. So he's trying to figure out, can an Indian have a legacy in a white town? And should a teenager be worried about his legacy anyways? So he's really starting to explore these ideas of how he fits in at Reardon. It's become a thing for him to kind of talk about. And the news comes to record and to record this event, this big basketball game that's about to happen. And he keeps doing, okay, so he is in ninth grade. So whenever they're asking him the questions, they're like, how does this make you feel? Weird, weird, you know. Well, that's not what the news wants to hear, that you feel weird about something. And then they take him off the camera and he gives them all the real reasons how he feels. You know, how I had to grow up really fast, too fast. I realized every single moment of my life is important, blah, blah, blah. He gives all this good stuff. And then they put him back on camera and he says weird again. And the people get mad and they're about to leave. And they're like, you know what? They talk to him for a minute and he's like, listen, I want to destroy my best friend. That's really it. You know, I'm here. I want to do this. I want to prove myself. I want to prove that I've become something. And so they decide to do a new interview where he tells his true feelings, and he does that. So the gym is absolutely packed. Everyone is there, his mom, his dad. And they say, you know what? You're starting tonight. And not only are you starting tonight, but your job is to guard Rowdy. And he's like, oh my gosh. Now he has another grown up saying, you can do it, you can do it. So listen, he's had these positive people throughout his life who have really been pushing him forward, right? Started off with Mr. P telling him that he needs to leave the reservation, giving him this idea to move on. We've got Eugene, who always told him how strong he was, how important he is. We had his grandmother, who always believes in him. His parents believe in him. Now he's got this coach saying, you can do it, you can do it. And he says, do you understand how amazing it is to hear that from an adult? From anybody. He loves hearing that he can do it. You know, it really pumps him up and gives him the strength that he needs. And a miracle happens. He does it. He does it. He plays against the reservation team. He guards Rowdy. He does an amazing job. In the first opening of the game, he jumps higher than Rowdy and gets the ball away from him in the middle of a slam dunk, actually goes back down the court, makes 3-point shot, and the gym explodes, and everybody is so happy. And they beat Wellpinit by 40 points. They destroyed them. Everybody's cheering. Everybody feels great. And then, as Arnold is standing there feeling great and cheering, he starts to have this internal conflict. And we really, really see this on page 195, and it should kind of hit home. It should touch us as we read this, because unless you've been in a situation like this, I don't think that this is a feeling that you would have. So it's really good to see different perspectives. Perspective changes the way we see things, right? He says, at first, he's really, really happy, right? He thought everyone would be cheering. He looks at his dad, and his dad is very quiet-faced. He says, we had defeated the enemy. We had defeated the champions. We were David who'd thrown a stone at Goliath. Well, remember, this is an illusion. This is a biblical illusion. David and Goliath. And Goliath is the giant, and David is the person. And David defeats Goliath with a stone, right? Well, he's realizing as he's looking at everything that actually Reardon is the giant, not the other way around. And although they won, He's looking at all the people, all the Indians from the reservations, and he's saying he knows that some of them might not have eaten breakfast that morning. There's no food in the house. Many of them live with drunk mothers or fathers. Some of them who have a father who deals with crack and meth. Two of those Indians had fathers in prison. None of them were going to college. None of them. When he looked at Reardon, everyone came from, most of them come from a whole family. They have food every day. They had transportation. They're going to college. They have this future that's been laid out for them. And he's looking and he's like, wow, I just crushed one of the only things that they have on this reservation, a basketball game. As minimal as it seems, I crushed that. And he really, really feels bad. He's having this internal conflict and he's crying out of shame. And he feels like he broke his best friend's heart, Rowdy, obviously. So then they, ironically, this chapter is titled Rowdy and I Have a Long, Serious Discussion About Basketball. So that's just a little email that goes back and forth. It's pretty short, but it's the first time that they've actually had a little good conversation. I don't know if it's good, but at least there's a conversation, there's some playfulness to it. So that's a good thing. So poor, 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 poor Arnold Spirit. So he lost Grandma already, right? And that just crushed him. He lost Eugene, and that crushed him. And he's in class, and the counselor comes down and pulls him out of class, and he finds out that his sister is dead. So we're circling back to this idea of alcoholism and how horrible it is and the plague that it places on a reservation. This is awful. 90% of the deaths that he has had to deal with have been because of alcohol. His sister dies because she's super drunk in her trailer. Her trailer catches on fire and she's so drunk she doesn't even wake up when she's being burned alive. Arnold doesn't know how to deal with these feelings. We have to remember that he is, again, a ninth grade boy. He doesn't know how to deal with all of this grief and all these feelings and everything that's come at him at once. So what does he do? He laughs. He laughs about it. He does not know how to handle it. And that's what this laughing is about. The laughing isn't because he's hysterical and he thinks everything is funny. He doesn't know how to deal with his feelings. And so that is what he's doing. And not only does that happen, but while he's waiting outside for his dad, he has a little extra terror instilled in him because it's snowing and his father is driving all the way from the reservation to pick him up. And all he can think of is, what if my dad goes off the road and dies on his way to get me because my sister died? And he just can't handle it. And it's just awful. And he gets back home and his mom is there and she slaps him in the face and says, I don't want you to ever drink. And he's like, great, I'm getting slapped because my sister died because she was drinking, but I wasn't drinking. And, everybody is just so torn up and so confused and so angry. It's just awful. Rowdy comes to the funeral, but he comes to the funeral and he kind of stays back and he's crying. He's crying and he doesn't know how to really express his feelings either, which we've never seen him express his feelings quite right. But he blames Arnold. He says, it's your fault. It's your fault that your sister's dead. So here we go again with Arnold blaming himself. I left the reservation, so she felt like she had to leave the reservation. If she never left the reservation, she wouldn't have been in Montana. She wouldn't have been in that trailer, and she wouldn't be dead now. This is the logic that he's got. And he's kind of putting this back on himself. He's just so conflicted, going back and forth. He goes to school the next day because he doesn't know what else to do. He doesn't want to sit at home around all that sadness, so he decides to go to school, which turns out to be a good thing because he gets to school and he realizes that he is important to the people around him. He's formed bonds at this school also. And it's probably kind of nice because these people don't deal with all the same things, but they're accepting him when they didn't accept him in the beginning. And he says, I was important to them. I first arrived, had learned, those who were so suspicious of me when I first arrived had learned to care about me. Maybe some of them even loved me. And that is where we kind of end on this, is where he's finding that acceptance at Reardon. He's coming to terms with all the things that are happening in his life. And that is my summary of page 169 to 213. So hopefully that helps.